I now recognize for questions the leader and sponsor of the Education Choice for Children Act, Mr. Smith from Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our panel for sharing your insight. Everyone on the panel, your insight is important. Thank you for sharing and dedicating your careers, your lives to bettering the lives of children and our country as a result. Let me begin by perhaps agreeing with our ranking member, Mr. Neal, when he says that legislation changes lives and we want to give people a chance. That's why I introduced the bill that I did, the Educational Choice for Children Act, or ECCA. It would create, as many of you know, a federal tax credit allocated to scholarship granting organizations in each state and the District of Columbia, important to add, to improve educational opportunities for families most in need, so that we can empower families, empower students, and empower folks all across America. Because this would provide a tax credit for donations and operates through independent non-government agencies, let me emphasize that funding for public education would remain untouched. In Nebraska, we just passed a similar approach, but what I am proposing and what we are proposing in the ECCA is similar to programs already authorized in 21 states, and as I just said, including my home state of Nebraska. Interestingly enough, a filibuster-proof majority of the state legislature, a bipartisan filibuster-proof majority in the state legislature, passed the state-level bill. And not surprisingly, special interests are now working very hard to undo that, to basically take resources away from folks in need, ultimately, who want to have a brighter future for their children. And certainly, Ms. Varma, your very compelling testimony speaks volumes. But now with the advent of virtual schooling, advanced homeschooling resources, and proposals like this, which provide support not just for scholarships, but also to support private supplemental assistance, families in every part of my very rural state and our country can access alternatives. Parents across the country had their eyes opened, as has been mentioned here earlier, of what goes on in the classroom, and this has brought a lot of folks together concerned about the future of our country, and certainly as it relates to our children and their future. I have to say that late last night I received an email from some lobbyists wanting to add comments to today's hearing. And so I hope that our, excuse me, our panelists could address a couple of these claims. Dr. DeAngelis, last night in this email, the lobbyists said, and they claim that the scholarship or voucher programs are racist and that private schools can discriminate against students based on race and other factors. Mr. DeAngelis, is that accurate?
They should bring that same energy to the public school system that discriminates on the basis of zip code. But look, if you look at the origins of private school choice, we've had school choice since the late 1800s in states like Maine and Vermont, which passed these programs because they were such rural areas. They didn't have public schools in some districts. They found out a long time ago, over 100 years ago, these lawmakers understood that if you didn't have a lot of choice, that's an argument to expand opportunities with vouchers as opposed to restricting them. And then as far as this claim that school choice is racist, look at the evidence today. 7 out of 8 studies existing on the topic find that school choice leads to more racial integration because the public school system is already so racially segregated. And if you look at support for these programs, you see across ideological lines, across racial lines, there's support for funding students as opposed to systems. And again, I'll bring up that the 9 most rural states in the country already have some form of private school choice, Maine and Vermont included. And lawmakers in these areas, I'm from Texas too, they'll say on the one hand, the public school is the only option. And then the next breath, with a straight face, they'll try to look in your eyes and tell you that this is going to decimate our fantastic rural public schools. Well, which one is it? If you don't have any other options, you should be the last person arguing this is going to defund your schools. And if your schools are so fantastic, why would giving families a choice defund those extraordinary institutions? You're really telling on yourself and letting the mask slip that you're not confident in your product. I think the rural public schools will be fine in Texas and other places as well.
Thank you. Also, I was contacted by this lobbyist claiming or suggesting that only public schools provide the foundation for our democracy.
I mean,
Ms.
look,
Varma,
we have
is that
15%
accurate?
proficiency rates in U.S. history for U.S. students. So it's-
Gotcha. Ms. Varma, would that be accurate from your perspective?
Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
That the claim was that public schools, only public schools, can provide the foundation for our democracy.
No, and I don't agree with that at all. One, when we say the American dream, and you say that someone has to go to, they don't have the choice. If you give them based off of their zip code, they have to go to the school. That's not choice, and that's not the rules of democracy. Our democracy says that we can choose everything else, but we can't choose where we send our kids to. That's a critical time in a kid's life. If I was left in my public school, I wouldn't have lived the American dream. I would have lived the status quo that was in my family. So I wholeheartedly disagree with that, and I think that person should look up the definition of democracy.
Thank you. Thanks again for this very timely hearing.